morning. Welcome back to the Broadcast Retirement Network. I'm Jeff Snyder. This is BRN Sunday for Sunday, January 21st, 2024. We've got another great show for you this week. We've got the Legal Eagles, David Levine and Kevin Walsh of Groom Law Group standing by. And then we'll be taking a look back at one of our better segments for the week. Sit back, relax, enjoy this episode of BRN Sunday. Well, we're going to kick off the show with a look at what's happening on Capitol Hill in terms of legislation, regulation, arbitration, litigation. So much going on. Here to break it down, they're the Legal Eagles, David Levine, Kevin Walsh. Both are principals with Groom Law Group. That's an employee benefits law firm based in Washington, D.C. Eagles, thanks so much for joining us this morning.
Jeff, good morning, good afternoon, and good night. It's great to be here with you. We are very excited to be here as always, and thanks for having us. And this week, we thought we might sort of look ahead into our crystal balls as to where we're going this year, because we're a little late in doing it, so we thought we'd jump in.
Yeah, let's, Kevin, I want to start with you because you got out, I don't know if it's a crystal ball or the 8-ball, which is, people probably don't remember, a little novelty item to help predict the future. But Kevin, last week we talked about the Health Financial Services Committee looking at the Department of Labor fiduciary rule. That's another step forward in that role after the comment period and the hearing that I think you and Groom participated in. But let's take a look ahead. What's top of mind when you look out at regulations and what's going on in 2024?
The top of mind is that the Department of Labor is going to be very busy in 2024. And actually, doing this a little bit later in January gives us a little bit of an edge in terms of predicting what's going to happen in 2024, because we've already seen some hints as to what's coming. The first thing that we're going to see is we're going to see a final fiduciary rule in all likelihood during the first half of this year. The new fiduciary rule we've talked a lot about, so I'm not going to go into too much depth here, but what we expect is it's going to expand the scope of who is an ERISA fiduciary well beyond who is an ERISA fiduciary today, in an attempt to largely regulate the distribution of annuities and also to cover rollovers into IRAs. David, I can keep going with other regulatory initiatives, or if you want to highlight one, we can ping pong back and forth.
David, there he is.
Other than having trouble unmuting myself because I have so much to say, let's talk about what I think. I think regulatory initiatives, I'm going to jump to the other side of the fence. Secure 2.0. There's a lot of things out there, and even things back from Secure. I'm going to hit two things very quickly and then ping pong it back to you, Kevin. On the IRS side, I think this is the year we will see more information and more discussion of things like long-term part-time. We have proposed rules, but there's lots of questions. Lots of people are still working through it. I think there's going to be a focus on that because people are still concerned, and there's comment letters and everything. So I think there's going to be dialogue as people try to implement it. And hopefully we get some regulatory relief that says good faith was good enough. Similarly, although it's not till 2026, I think you'll see a continued focus on Roth required catch-ups because people are thinking about it. And this is also me suggesting we should, because if you wait till the last minute, I don't think the IRS is going to extend again. And now is a good chance to do this. Of course, we're waiting for IRS guidance, and I think we might see that. Back to you, Kevin.
Yeah, so just talking about the other initiatives going on the labor side of the house, auto portability was a big topic in Secure and Secure 2.0. And there's an idea that, maybe it would make sense to have a more streamlined process for allowing, folks in abandoned plans or folks with small account balances to be rolled either into a new employer plan or to an IRA. I expect we're going to see rulemaking on that this year. Other areas, we're going to see changes around the rules about who can serve as a independent asset manager in a way that allows them to engage in transactions with affiliates of the plan sponsor. Kind of rounding this out more, I think we'll also see changes to, the process that folks use for applying for individual exemptions. In the past, 5-10 years, we've seen very few individual exemptions granted. The Labor Department has indicated it would like to, have that individual exemption process open again, which would allow for things like contributions of employer stock, or possibly allow for, transactions that the statute would prohibit if DOL thinks the conditions are provide enough protection. Yeah. The last thing that I think we'll see is rules around abandoned plans. There's always risk when a plan sponsor goes out of business that, the participants may not be as protected. And so we expect the Labor Department to, be engaged in rulemaking to turn abandoned plans. Now it's an election year, so they really got to rush, but they've got a full plate.
Yeah. Can I just ask a question? Why, just for my own edification and maybe the audience's, why is it a rush before? Why do they need to get all this kind of locked in? They meaning the regulators get all this locked in before the election. Is it because a new administration trying to lock in so things can't be undone after potentially a new Congress, new Senate, new administration comes in?
And so, generally, if you've got non-controversial rules, if you finish things, if agencies are consistent from administration to administration, there's less of a pressure to get things done well before an election. But if you're entering an area where you're not sure that, the next administration is going to agree, and so if you're in an area that is slightly more partisan, and, sometimes retirement is partisan, other times it's not. If you're in an area where the next administration could possibly, prefer different values, different outcomes, different goals, it's important for an agency to, not only have the rulemaking done and in effect before the change of administration, to have it done and in effect well before there's a change of administration. There's a whole process for going through rulemaking, notice and comment. You're supposed to provide, a robust comment period. You're supposed to provide a certain amount of time after a final rule is published before it's effective. And yes, having a new administration have to go through that can be more protective of your rule. But for example, if your rule's not published in the Federal Register at least 30 days before a change of administration, then you don't have to go through that process. A new administration can just correct the Federal Register. Similarly, if your rule hasn't been published, a whole bunch of congressional days before the change of administration, then a new Congress can come in and just say, we don't like the rule, and a new president could sign the bill saying, we don't like that rule, and then the rule is written out. Now, we only think about that as change of administrations because, realistically, if you have a regulation that Congress doesn't like, but you have the president whose agency issued the rule in the White House, presidents typically don't sign rules reversing their own rulemaking. If they don't like the rulemaking, they just don't finalize it. Mm-hmm. So this really only comes into play if there's changes as a result of elections. But typically in election years, agencies really have to hurry, or they start running into some of these, potential process hurdles that allow for rulemaking to be undone more quickly than it would otherwise be undone.
Thanks, Kevin. I was going to say, I'm done because I figured we've used our segment up, but that was a great explanation.
Yeah. Guys, we're going to leave it there. We really appreciate coming on the program, and we look forward to having you back again next week. Bye, gentlemen. Enjoy the rest of your weekend.
Thank you, Jeff, and thank you, listeners. Bye.
Imagine a new television network that will make you richer, healthier, and in control of your financial future. This network is for the policewoman in Nashville, Tennessee, the baker in Dubuque, Iowa, the teacher in Lexington, Kentucky. We want to make the idea of savings and retirement culturally relevant. But what do you see as a defining issue of the midterms? Especially for the smaller businesses. I mean, they are the lifeblood of the American economy. Featuring exclusive interviews, current affairs, and docuseries. 33 years old, you retired early.
The philosophy is money only matters if it helps you live a life that you love.
But you got to start thinking about retirement as soon as you get in.
The Broadcast Retirement Network will drive very high engagement with premium partnerships. So this isn't retirement and savings for your parents or grandparents. This is for all Americans. And we're going to change the way you think about money. Welcome to the next frontier of retirement and savings. This is BRN, the Broadcast Retirement Network.
Welcome back. This week was a great week of shows on BRN AM, but we had a very special guest, Professor James Whelan of the Tennessee Institute for Gambling Education and Research. And You're not going to believe it, but young men face high risk for gambling addiction as sports betting continues to surge. Let's give that segment a listen. Sir, James, it's great to see you. Thanks so much for joining us on the program this morning.
Oh, thanks for having me. I appreciate being here.
Yeah, this is a story. You can't help but turn on the TV, Doctor, if you're watching a sporting event and you see betting. I mean, every sports league in this country and abroad, they're aligned with some level of betting. How pervasive is betting among young men, and what's the impact to their mental health?
Well, to the first part about how many are engaging in it, it's really not clear. The best data that exists right now is about 20% of the population engages in sports betting.
Yeah.
And that those data suggest that the most popular, the most common type of gambler, person who's gambling on sports, tends to be younger, below the age of 35, and is at least historically been slanted towards men.
And what? Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry, I interrupted you. Go ahead. Sorry.
No, what was your second part of your question?
I was going to ask you, why is it so pervasive? Why, I don't understand why it's. I mean, I guess I understand people. It's easy to swipe and do things with your phone, but it's so impactful on someone's mental health.
Yeah, and the impact on the mental health is for a minority of people who do sports wager or any form of wagering. But for that minority, the impact could be completely life-changing. I mean, it could put just at the financial end, it could put people in debt, similar to buying a home. It has an enormous impact on people's lives. And of course, that reverberates to the other parts of their life, the relationship with others, family members, friends, as well as it impacts experiences of anxiety and depression, and it includes higher risk of suicidal thoughts and actually completed suicide. Now, what is really capturing people here? Well, I think at the base of it is we love sports. I don't know about you, but myself and many of my friends, many of the family members I know, men and women, watching sports, talking about sports is a key part of our life. And particularly for young men, becoming knowledgeable about sports is sort of not just a rites of passage, but also a way of communicating with each other, Monday morning quarterbacking per se. And so the result of that is men in particular feel themselves knowledgeable. They feel like they know their teams, or they know this league, this conference, whatever it might be. And they feel like that knowledge gives them an upper edge when they wager. But the other parts of it are equally important to pay attention to, and that is what has happened since the Supreme Court decision in 2018 is that gambling has moved from a trip, a drive, to being on your phone. And it is so easily accessible, and it's hard for us to untangle that popularity of sports from that easy accessibility. And then I'm going to go back to your original comment, and that is the third factor that's really weighing heavily here is how much advertising is occurring. There's so much information and encouragement to bet, not just from bought ads on radio, TV, whatever, but also commentators. We go to ESPN, which is now a gaming company. You can't watch an ESPN program without wagering being discussed as though it is actually part of that sport, part of that event, all the way through to looking at social media, where in addition to pay ads on social media, there are tons of people out there willing to talk about what bets they make, how much they won, people suggesting you can contact them and they can sell you good information so you can make better bets. That information is pervasive. So one is we love sports and we think we're smart. Two, we got easy access. Three, we're bombarded with information telling us you ought to go bet.
Yeah, and just to follow up on that, and then we'll go to a commercial break. How analogous is this addiction to drug addiction, cigarette addiction, other types, sexual addictions, as example? Does it throw off the same dopamine
I'm not a doctor, clearly, but does it show up the same type of internal feelings that those other things do?
Right. And it does. To really put it simply, the hit of dopamine that everyone talks about is because we get motivated to do something, and that dopamine release actually further motivates us to do that. And that sort of event in the brain happens regardless of what you're excited about. So in that way, it's very similar to across all addictions. The other similarity across all addictions is that this brain chemistry event doesn't occur in isolation. It occurs in a complex of someone's life where they're bored, or they need money, or they are harmed or traumatized in some way. So the person who has the struggles with the harms are often those people who not only are they heavily invested in this, but they also got complications to their life that drive them to go to what's rewarding.
Well, that was certainly an eye-opening interview, and clearly there's a lot that needs to be done. I want to thank James Whelan for joining us, and we look forward to having him back on the program again very soon. And that wraps up this episode of BRN Sunday. Have a topic of interest, someone you think we should talk to? Well, drop us a line, and don't forget, for all the latest curated news and lifestyle, wellness, finance, tech, so much more and all in one place and without bias, check out today's edition of our daily newsletter, The Morning Pulse. Want to search our archives, check out our latest content? Then visit our website. We're back again tomorrow with another great edition of BRN AM. We'll have a very special guest and an important topic. Until then, I'm Jeff Snyder. Stay safe, keep on saving, and don't forget, roll with the changes.